get your small groups together sometimes. Sometimes it's tough to get us together. But it's really valuable, I think, for us to be able to brainstorm and just kind of think together. You guys are all going through very similar things, whether you're trying to figure out resources or whatever problems you're trying to solve. And I think it'll be really valuable to kind of get some ideas for each other. So one of the challenges that small groups had, a few different small groups had, over the past year has been communication and staying in touch with each other and communicating with each other. Has anybody found any good strategies, good ways to communicate as a group? I would say in normal times or COVID times. Anybody find any good tools or strategies to communicate as a group, normal times or COVID times?
We have a Facebook group.
Do you have a Facebook group? And that works well for you?
We do.
Does everybody in your group use Facebook?
Until recently, yes. So if it's something that like everybody needs to know, we'll send out an email.
Okay.
But before COVID, we would take turns bringing dinner, and that's where you RSVP. How many people in your family are coming and doing stuff, so it worked for us.
Good. So this is a challenge that you'll probably have faced, we face as a church, all that kind of, I mean, it's just a tough thing. To be a group, there's got to be some kind of agreed upon communication, right? It's a sacrifice for some people, and it's easy for some people, but you got to find some way to communicate. So we'll continue on that before I throw them off. Go ahead.
We use Zoom.
Zoom?
That's worked out well.
That works well for your group? Good. And how often does your group meet? Or did
Every other week.
Every other week. You got together over Zoom to talk. Perfect. Other things? Other ways you stayed in touch?
We do group email.
Group email? Who said that? Thanks, Judy. So you guys use just an email chain, like a big group email to send out important things. And do people reply back to that?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I thought you were going to say. So I mean, a huge pro, everybody has it, right? And it works really well. And like I just said, right? Everybody has to make sacrifices. So some people, I've tried that before. People are like, I don't like keeping track of all the emails and all the replies and all the dings on my phone. And I'm like, okay, and that's fair. Maybe we'll try something else. But we have to communicate, right? So in some way, we're all going to make some sacrifices. Good. So there's lots and lots of tools out there. Go ahead.
I was going to say that the best way that we found is good old-fashioned call them on the phone.
Call them on the phone. Spiritual Life team will tell you that. Phone calls, and we'll talk about that a little later when we get to recruiting. Phone calls, in person, it's the best. Catch your small group at church. Catch your small group, make a phone call when you're driving from one place to another if somebody has been not around all that often or if somebody's kind of out of the loop. Phone calls, catching people on Sundays, seeing people at the grocery store, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. I don't know how valuable some of these things are to you guys. We use GroupMe, which is a group messaging app. Actually, you guys use GroupMe too. There's WhatsApp. There's a lot of kind of group messaging systems. One of the challenges, or one of the things that you're going to kind of figure out, where do I see Kathy? Right over here, Keith, just FYI. Is that people just have to agree to it. And that's kind of part of the thing. If some people say, hey, you know what, I don't want to do that thing, we say, we got to communicate, right? So you can jump on it, or you might be a little out of the loop. We'll try to keep you in. But as a leader, I'm not going to call 10 different people all the time because they don't want to, try and use something that we're all, or most of us are agreeing to use, okay? So good. That was definitely a challenge, I think, throughout the year. Next one, homework. How many of you guys do homework for your small groups? How many of you guys have just some work that they need to read ahead of time, they need to watch a video ahead of time, they need to write something down ahead of time? Sometimes.
Depends what study we're doing.
Depends the study, absolutely. Sometimes.
So we actually started doing that, and then enough people said they didn't like that, and that was like a bar to them participating.
Yep.
And we stopped doing that.
And that's listening to your group, right? In the same way as when we communicate, right? I might say, look, I love to use Facebook. If 90% of my group says we don't like Facebook, we'd much rather use an email chain, time to be the one who sacrifices, right? I'm going to say, okay, let's try and do an email chain. If I want to meet beforehand, assuming it doesn't go against our values, right? If I want to meet beforehand or do homework beforehand, but none of my group does, All right, that's not where we're at, right? We're going to sacrifice a little bit for that. That's good. That's good. And so some of you guys did that homework beforehand, some of you didn't. So and your solution to the challenge was don't do homework beforehand, which is a fine solution.
Because people would just like not participate, so.
It's tough to create a place where people feel honest. That's actually a pretty important thing to eventually get to a spot where people say, hey, I just know I can't do it. I look at just things like we're doing right now with the Neighbors Care event, right? One of our steps afterwards will be to say, kind of to the congregation, what do you need, right? Maybe we're missing something. Maybe I'm missing something. What do you need? And so sometimes I do that as a small group, and I say, hey guys, we're all going to do all this homework. And then they say, maybe they're afraid to say, but they say by not participating, they say, that's not what we need. And maybe there's something else that they're needing there. Okay, so we have homework beforehand, we have communication, a communication vehicle, and there's plenty of other things that could fall into communication. And then one other thing that I was seeing on here was regular attendance. Anybody struggle with regular attendance? One. What's that?
I think during the summer.
During the summer, so the rest of the time you're pretty good.
We got a couple of them that have, summer homes or go to Florida for an extended period of time.
Yep.
So we generally, if we have enough people that are gonna come, we'll still continue. If not, then we'll dark during the summer and come back on in the fall.
This is a side question. How many of you break for the summer? About half? About half? Those of you?
Not the full summer.
Not the full summer.
Instead of bi-weekly, we go monthly maybe.
Okay, you go monthly, and you did a gathering still. Something.
Yeah, we did last week.
Okay. Okay. I was just curious. Maybe afterwards, talk to me. Those of you guys who break during the summer, if you like it. Not sure. I'm not sure what I think about summer breaks. I think but each group is different. Go ahead.
Question. Tied in the communication and the attendance, how many of you guys require or encourage people to RSVP? Like say you're meeting next Wednesday, do you just put it out there and whoever comes, or do you put it out and say, let us know if you're coming?
It's a good question.
We said let us know.
Let us know, let us know.
You guys did?
You guys let us know?
Yeah.
All right, we got it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kurt.
We do ours after we complete our meeting. We do ours to try to set the next date.
So yours isn't necessarily the same day of the month each time.
No.
It's good. That's smart. Both are. I mean, there's so many different options. Again, for groups to figure out what works. The amount of different jobs out there are crazy. Like I can't hang out with any of my friends who live out of the city because I work on Sundays. We got to figure out something. And so different jobs, different people just have different. And so some people are able to schedule a regular thing. Some people aren't. That's I think a good thing to learn, a good important thing to learn. So some of you, if you need RSVPs, my group, the rule is if you can't make it, you tell us the day before, at least the day before. So I really don't want people to just not show up. And then there's a ton of grace for if somebody gets sick that day, or if something comes up, right? These small groups are hugely about grace too. The challenge with attendance. Oh, let me jump back to attendance. So, did many other people have a challenge with people being there regularly throughout the last year or so?
We actually had an increase in attendance during the time when we were Zooming. Because even when they were in Florida, they had no excuse.
So this is something to learn. I recognized it from my group too. My group has been Zooming for the last year and, I don't know, 3-4 months. Nobody misses. If the snowstorm came, you don't miss, you don't cancel. You're out of town, I've had people Zoom in from their hotel room that they're staying at.
We did from our car, so.
Yeah, just from the phone. So, I tell you, I do not have the solution for how to have a mixed group for Zoom and in person. If anybody has a question about that, I don't have that answer yet.
Actually, you can, your computer up front, and you put that on Zoom, and you have the group behind it with an opening for where the computer's at.
Good.
That way anyone who Zooms in can actually still participate.
And you just have their volume up?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you got to brainstorm some way the volume in that issue. Okay. There were a few other challenges that we had that we shared at our last meeting. Are there any that anybody would specifically like to brainstorm? Those are a few of the common ones that I noticed across our experiences. Okay. One thing, and we'll talk about this many times going forward. Well, I was just having a conversation today about somebody who was talking to me about how much they love their small group. And I was talking to their leader, and their leader was like, they're not there very often. So the leader is kind of feeling, I think, a little bummed, maybe. I would feel a little bummed, maybe I'll just put it that way. But the person was feeling great, loved it. And so expectations there are different. Right? You got somebody who's like, yeah, I mean, occasional attendance is fine. I'm good. I feel great. And you got somebody else who's like, I kind of thought more than occasional was the norm, or was agreed upon. So agreeing upon a lot of those expectations as a group, and that'll be part of what you guys start September 12th, is those expectations. Go ahead and pull out this blue sheet. And we're going to start out on the side that says values of a small group. On the back, it's going to say recruitment plans. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we go. And there is a lot to cover, so I apologize if there are any gaps in things. You can always email me or call me to get those gaps filled in, but I'm going to try and hit on some of the most important things that we've got, okay? So when we talk about the role of a leader, and let me tell you how this fits into like the things that the church does, right? So the role of the leader, let me read this here and just make sure we get it right. Small group leaders responsible for supporting the spiritual health of the members in their group. They'll also lead their group by putting in these key characteristics, these key values, right? When we talk about spiritual health, right? That's one of the important aspects that we're talking about as a church, as a body of believers, right? There's plenty of things that we could do. We could have tons of biblical head knowledge. That's nice, it's good, helps. But we want to stay healthy with our relationship with Christ, right? We want to be reminded of who we are in Christ and kind of what our role is in this bigger picture in Christ, right? And when that gets out of whack, when we either start to think that we're not forgiven, we're not loved, we're too bad, we start to think we're too good, right? God would never do anything to me, right? Those can be problems. And that's part of what we want the leaders to watch out for. This is always a challenge. This is one of the reasons we don't talk about hosts too often. Hosts are good, but we want somebody kind of watching out for that. Now, we have a spiritual life team, and they will only call people outside of small groups. So if somebody doesn't show up for 3 weeks to worship, if somebody doesn't show up 4 weeks, 5 weeks to worship, they won't get a phone call if they're in a small group, because it's the assumption that the small group leader is checking in on those people, right? So if you have somebody who's not showing up, they're fading off, Jim talked about it a little bit ago. Pick up the phone. They missed 2, they missed 3. Call them. How you doing? Anything I can pray about for you? That check-in. And I tell you, it may be valuable actually for me to share what the spiritual life team does with you. I'll share that data with you too. I think that'd be useful. So I should have had that here with me, but I'll send it over to you. Okay? They just have a process for kind of how they go through those conversations. But we want to make sure that everyone's doing well. So if small group leaders are taking care of those people in small groups, spiritual life team is contacting people who aren't in small groups. Hopefully we're moving them from there to small groups, and then we'll have a church full of tons of small groups with tons of people being fulfilled and enjoying Christ. Okay? I want you to take a second. You can come over here with the Walters real quick, or just lean your chair over. You can turn around and maybe talk to Julie. What I want you to think about is that question under the role of leader. What are 2 things that you could do to support the spiritual health of your group? So what are 2 practices, habits, things that you could do to support the spiritual health of your group? And I'll give you 2 minutes, 3 minutes to just kind of think about that. You can see on this page, we're going to be doing this a lot, so get comfortable. I don't know. Leave me alone, Tosh.
Can I help you?
I'll get him. You go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I do love pens.
They're fantastic. I tell you, pens stop with me. I'm the guy.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, we do for
I think kind of what Zach shared about this a couple times or in this church or whatever, I hadn't really thought about kind of like being aware of what's kind of going on in their lives. You know, thinking about leading small group, and thinking about like, what you do the day in small groups. So yeah, they have a life outside just kind of small groups.
Thank you, Kim. All right, take another 20 seconds, and we'll come back and talk. Gotta make sure I don't walk out of this too often.
Yeah, I widened this one.
That's smart.
Went out.
What's that? Oh yeah, just one of the blues, one of the greens. Thank you.
There's, we have about me and like one other person.
All right, why don't we start bringing it back here. Those of you guys who moved a little, stay where you're at, because we're going to be doing this more.
Repeat the answers. I don't think you did.
Yeah, we will. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. You're amazing. Okay, so let's just think about 5 things that we came up with. I'd just love to hear. One, so I can steal your ideas and write them down. One of the advantages to recording, and 2, so that we can hear from each other. So what were some things that you found that you could potentially do as a leader to help take care of the spiritual health of your group?
Stay connected.
Stay connected?
Like, with the kickoff coming up and everything else, is to tee it off now, waiting several weeks before. Make sure that with changes or anything with the public wants to do, they say, we want to see in person, and tee it up so that when the start comes, you're prepared.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things that is really tough is sometimes we put things off. I know the feeling. And then it's tough later. But if you stay connected the whole time, it's a lot easier. Yeah, that's, in some way I would encourage you guys to have something built into your calendar, your weekly calendar, that gets you thinking about your group. Maybe it already happens, maybe it's natural, but in some way, I mean, I've got people who I pray for on a daily, weekly, whatever basis, but it's all alarms on my phone. If anybody comes up to me on Sunday and says, hey, Zach, I need you to do this thing, some of you guys know it doesn't happen unless it makes it into the phone. And so I think having a strategy like that too is a really good idea. Did I need to send anything out this week? Did I need to check in on anybody? Okay, anything else? Go ahead. Ian.
Well, maybe relating, getting into the practice of relating the church, the message at church, you know, and just say, you know, this really spoke to me, and then it kind of makes people maybe feel a little accountable, you know?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I would encourage both grow deep stuff and sermons. Again, you know, you being connected to the church is going to help. I think that it's going to help them get more connected, right? Mm-hmm. With both the church and with the group. And so I think grow deep also helps out with that. But I think the sermons, that's a fantastic point. Keep going.
Zach, I like the small group resources because the way we work ours is we have a lot of type A personalities. And so everybody likes to be a leader at times.
Yep.
So
kind of take a role of each week when we're setting up our next meeting. At that point, we also say, okay, who wants to lead next
Mhm.
group? And so having a resource to share with them is going to be helpful.
Good.
Yeah.
And that, one thing you find, you probably notice this in yourself, any group that you're a part of, if you don't have some role of accountability, if you don't have something where the group loses because you're not there, it's really easy to just not show up. It's really easy to disconnect from that. But if they rely on me for something, that's big. And so we'll talk in the future about things like taking attendance, about things like having somebody who's going to be the prayer leader for your group, somebody who's going to maybe take notes depending on what you're studying, but also transfer in who's going to lead, who's going to lead this discussion. I know there's a few people here who are here because that's kind of what they've done in their group already. So fantastic. Let me get one more. Go ahead.
Well, kind of in her vein, in business, in these meetings, I hate showing up to a meeting where people aren't prepared. So
Mhm.
as leaders, we need to be prepared instead of just throwing open, hey, what do you guys want to talk about this week? I think we need to have preparation, and then maybe not ask them to do homework, but hey, this week we're going to talk about this, and if you'd like to do some reading, this is kind of where our reading is going to come from.
Yeah.
But I hate showing up to places where it's just like, hey, what do you want to talk about this week? I mean, you can have as part of your meeting about that,
Yeah.
but let's have some focus and
Yeah.
some preparation as a leader.
Showing up, I mean, yeah, anything where somebody's not prepared is just tough. It loses credibility, it loses energy, and so I think, certainly part of taking care of their spiritual health is showing that they're worth your time, right? When you go back to talk about expectations, there's going to be some expectations of the leader. And I think that might be something at times that a group shares with you. Hey, if you say you're going to do something, we'd really like you to do it, right? If you say we're going to be there to study something, I'd really like to make sure that there's actually something to study. Yeah, it's important to give ourselves grace, but that is a very important thing to do. Last one.
Our meetings are divided into 3 parts. The first part is when we walk in, it's social.
Good.
Basically talking to each other, seeing how they did since they've been doing since the last time we were, seeing what they have planned for the future and that, so we have some idea about how their attendance will be. Then we go into a organized study. Therefore, there's never any guess as to what we're supposed to be discussing for the day, what areas, and it's always a study that has a narrative, questions for that, and then questions to consider for the future. And then after that, we go into a health and wellness, where we discuss who's got family that's sick, and that somebody's taking notes. Always an email goes out to the entire group telling exactly who's been sick, who needs prayers, and all of that.
That's fantastic. We'll talk about that last bit at some point in our, I don't remember where. We'll talk about it. That's really good though, so remind me of that if we seem to get to the end and I haven't talked about it yet. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to cover the next 2 things at once. We'll brainstorm some ideas together as our groups. We'll give about a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll come back. So the next 2, as we're getting into the key characteristics of the group, the first is that consistent and regular fellowship. I noticed there's nothing on there necessarily about weekly, monthly, bi-monthly. I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer, but consistent and regular. We're going to see this in Acts 2:42. The disciples regularly got together. And so whatever, kind of works for you there. And so we're going to talk about those friendships between individuals. And this is what that fellowship's focused on, right? And some avenue, right? I may not be best friends with everybody in the group, but I should find some friendship in there, some good connection in there. So Tracy and I, if we're in the same small group, there's going to be a relationship, a friendship that's kind of developed there, and there's going to be some effort poured into that. But then Tracy's also going to be committed to my fellowship with God, right? So there's going to be some degree of, hey, how's your Bible reading going? How are you doing? That kind of stuff, right? So you're just talking about health issues and talking about checking in on health issues. There's also going to be a check-in on that kind of spiritual health issues. This, depending on how you do it, well, we'll get to that in a minute. I don't want to spoil anything. So that's going to kind of be that fellowship, right? What's this relationship? And how do we work towards that? And what's this relationship? And how do we help each other towards that? Okay? And then the second, so that's the first key characteristic. The second key characteristic is discipleship. So learning God's word and being trained to live it out. So it's to some degree, and in the curriculum that we have shared, there will be a question along lines of this. But to some degree, I want to grow because I'm in your group. I want to get better at something because I'm in your group. So maybe I'm struggling with my Devos and I want to read it daily. I want to get better at that because I'm in your group, right? Or I want to get better at praying for people. Or I want to get better at doing what I say I'm going to do. I want to have more scripture in my head. There could be a number of things. But to some degree, this discipline, this disciple that I am of Christ, it includes disciplines that I'm going to become better at, and I want to get better at them by being in your group, right? So, and again, I can go back to the mission statement. We're going to create disciples of Jesus who know and enjoy God and worship, read and reflect on Scripture, serve and share the gospel, right? So, these two kind of questions. Actually, real quick, any questions on that discipleship aspect? All right, there really quick. Like I told you, I'm going to go through things real quick today. So I want you to go ahead and take a second, take 3 minutes, and talk about, you won't get to 3 ways for both of these. What are some ways that you could facilitate fellowship in your group? And what are some ways that you could facilitate discipleship in your group? Okay? Go ahead, take 3 minutes or so and do that. Let's bring it back here a little more. So let's start with fellowship, and some of us, by the way, this might be like, we never thought about this stuff, and maybe some of you are already experts at it. I don't know, but we're at different starting spots, and that's perfectly fine. Been there. Get out of here. Tangents. We'll stay on course. What were some of the thoughts that you had for fellowship? Let's take 3, maybe. Go ahead, Ann.
Can I have a question?
I'll allow it.
Question?
Sure.
Do most of you host your Bible study at your home, and then that's where it is all the time? Or do you move it around to all your people?
Ours is always in our home. We mix it up.
You meet at different homes? I didn't know that.
She rotated from home to home.
Can't everybody takes a turn?
Whoever home is hosting it is also the leader for the study that day.
Oh, so we share the leadership all the time.
Do we have a leader, a feeder, and a host? I signed up for host, leader, and feeder. Brings the snacks.
The host is the first
The host is at their house, but then they don't have to do the food or leave.
They just have to clean it.
I like that. This is, hey, not having to clean. Zoom might be tempting for me for a while because we haven't had to clean our house in quite a while. And with a baby now,
We used to have a really large group, we don't ever have that space.
Yeah.
that's tough.
So we
Yep,
here,
you guys-
but then we haven't met here since everything was strange. So we met outside, which was nice.
Yeah.
But it's been a challenge. We haven't really had a real meeting since COVID.
Yeah, since COVID. It's tough. And one thing that's valuable that you guys do well is you facilitated friendships well. So it's not like it's really taking it's taking a hit, I think, but it's not. Because those friendships are there and solid. You're in good shape.
We have fellowship under.
Good. So stick with that. And what are some of the other ways that you guys have thought of to facilitate fellowship within your group?
We were doing everything around food and meals.
People show up for food.
Come on.
That's right. It works.
Yeah.
It works. So
Well, we
food.
rotated when things were normal. We had brought food. It was somebody's turn each week to bring food, and we got money cup, and it was.
How many groups do food? How many groups do food?
Well, we do snacks.
Snacks?
You know, we'll have a cake or something like that, but we don't do a full-scale meal or anything.
Well, by food, I mean like Little Caesars pizza here.
Oh, no. Yeah, absolutely. Back before they got out of that
I know.
location. That's a hit. Okay.
Our group does snacks, everybody takes them.
This is good to know. This is good to know. Go ahead.
So one thing that we do is during the different events throughout the year that the church hosts, whether it be Big Break, Summer Cafe, the parade cleanup. In the past, we've had our small group participate in those things together. So trying to kind of do a little of both, do small group together
Yeah.
and serve as well.
Of course I'm gonna say that's an excellent idea. But I think it's also been helpful for your group. I know you guys couldn't make the last meeting because you were doing summer cafe and I double booked, you know what I mean? You run out of time. But I think that has been, those types of things, who was I talking to about this just a little bit? Oh, Linda, we were talking about Prosper the City, right? And doing an event that serves together, brings the group together, right? Whenever you do something, you feel like I got together with you and accomplished this task, right? It unites people. And I think that's certainly a thing that does that. That's a good idea. One more thing.
We get together as a group and we're supporting CCLS Uganda.
Mhm.
So we get together and put that together. We also support a middle school in East St. Louis where we provided birthday bags, or we decorated the bags, and we filled the bags for the boys and girls for our classroom over there. Otherwise, those children may not have received them.
This was the coolest thing.
It's social for us, and
Yeah.
also providing a service.
As much as you can mix together, cut corners, guys. Cut corners. As much as you can mix things together, and you can mix service with fellowship and all these things, do that. It's fantastic. Great idea. One of the first things I tell people if they come to Webster and they really want to get connected, join a small group, go on a mission trip. Go on a mission trip, you're going to be friends with somebody, right? You're in it with them, right? You're working on something together. Fantastic. And you're welcome, Kathy, for that. Kathy, missions team. All right. Let's talk a little bit about ministry and, discipleship. Can somebody just give me one thing you thought about with discipleship? What was a way that you could facilitate discipleship?
We did outreach through some of the people in our group, like to the elementary school and did the supplies. That was an outreach and was able to talk to the parents and the kids and Tracy. I don't know if there's anyone.
That's a good
like that,
idea.
so.
So you guys, who did you reach out to? Say again.
It was the elementary
Crestwood
school.
Elementary.
Cool.
And we provided, Denny and Terry and all of them went over and provided school supplies and talked to kids.
So many things I don't know about. That's fantastic. Okay, that's cool. I vaguely remember some, but okay. Thank you. That's good. I like that. Let's move on. Let's talk about ministry and serving. I want to respect your time, so we're going to try and be done with this in the next 8 minutes. So ministry, they give to each other as they're in need. And so this is, you're going to see this really clearly in Acts 2:42, in Acts 4:35, that we share the things that we have. They view everything that they had as was in common, as being in common in that early church. And this is what ministry kind of talks about. Ministry is a weird word because it gets used in a lot of different ways. But we kind of take care of the material need of the people around us, right? And you'll see in these passages, we certainly do that for outsiders, but we also and almost especially do it for each other, right? This passage that they'll know we're Christians by our love. This is a passage that reflects how we love each other. Then outside, people who view that will be like, holy cow, that's intense love. I got to check that out, right? And so they had things in common, and to the point that they sold houses if somebody else was in need, right? So they said, done living here, just get rid of the house, because somebody in my church needs something. Not asking you to do that yet. But I think one of the ways that we kind of run the church when you get into a larger church is you kind of let that church be a church of small groups, right? And that way that still happens for people, and those relationships are there, and those needs are still found and then met. So thinking about how do we meet the material needs, the physical needs of the people in our group. Some of these are really natural things that you guys, I'm sure, have already done tons of, and some you just may think outside the box a little bit more for some of these. So that's the ministry kind of aspect for each other. And then evangelism and serving, and we share the gospel with people who don't follow Jesus, and they look for ways to make life better for people. The first one I think is pretty self-explanatory, though still complicated, on the how. The second one, and I use the phrase make life better pretty intentionally, because I think it's purposeful enough and vague enough to kind of help understand what serving is, right? If I'm serving Kathy in some way, she should view what I'm doing for her as making her life better, right? It should improve things. So me coming up to Scott and saying, let me serve you with a hug, right? You may hate hugs, right? That's how I want to serve.
I'll take
But
one.
it should, I know you would. That was a bad example. But it should make your life better, right? And so when we talk about evangelism and serving, we'll get into that more in the future. For this, what I just want you to think about, for just 2 minutes, is the ministry one. We're gonna stick away from the evangelism and serving one. We'll cover that enough. But just with the ministry one, go ahead and talk with your people for 2 minutes about some ways to facilitate ministry within your group. So how do you meet the needs of each other in your group? Go ahead, take 2 minutes to do that.
Well, I think the first thing is you need to know them well.
And that's on camera, so it's official.
Thank you,
Just make sure as we get to recruitment stuff, I don't miss anything. Okay. That's where I might miss. I got the sheets up here. I got them on. So we should be good. And I'm going to try and wrap around 12:30. So I think we're pushing those. Take another minute. I know we're going quick on these. She's good at this. She's good at this. And so you see the gaps even within like staff and within, right? I should have thought, I thought about, hey, Tom, making a design for some neighbors who just had a kid, right?
One of the things
There's certain areas that we
making an environment where
so we might miss it in a small group, we might miss it in our staff, we might miss it in our neighborhood.
I keep in mind, we just recently switched to AC system.
teaching people that
And
it's
so
okay to
that's the example that's like hard in my head. I don't know if I would feel comfortable
Yeah,
if this
don't-
was the case,
don't ask.
sharing with my small
Say,
group.
yeah, I'd love to do this, can I bring it over
We need help
Sunday?
paying for our
Right,
new thing.
right, I'm not asking if I can make a meal, I'm asking, I'm gonna bring it over, can it be Sunday?
And I don't know that I would feel comfortable sharing.
That's right, that's what I said, would you rather have
But if
lasagna frozen or fresh?
needs, then we
I'll see you Sunday, I'll see you Saturday. All right, let's bring it back. Let's bring it back. Got some work to do. Looking at ministry, can I get just a couple things from ministry that you thought of? Go ahead.
We provide meals for people when, say, they've had surgery and cannot prepare for themselves. So we make a list of people and dates and make sure that it happens.
I used to think that that was not that helpful. I was wrong. I was wrong. Fantastic way to meet the physical needs of people. Fantastic way. Good idea. One other. Oh, hold on, Jim.
Gotta make sure that people know that you are available, because sometimes people, are afraid to ask. They're imposing on you or something like that.
I will say most likely, they just won't ask. Probably. And this is part of, I heard Pastor Bierman say this at some point to some, I think it was to the men's ministry group, but it could be somewhere else. And he said something about, I think it was on a retreat, husbands and wives and restaurants. And so the husband would say something like, where do you want to go? And the wife would say something like, it's up to you. And then the husband would just choose wherever he wanted to go. The role is to figure out what that other person needs, right? In that husband role, figure out what your wife enjoys, pursue that, and then go there, right? This is part of, I think, the challenge. And I don't want, one thing we'll talk about in a second is we won't succeed at all these things, certainly not all the time. But if, sorry, generalizations, forgive me for, but I think one of the things that you notice in friendships is I don't have to really ask or tell my friends what they need. They're figuring that out by being my friend, right? They're pursuing that and then they're offering that, right? They figured it out in some conversation that I'm hurting in some way, or that I'm going out of town and I could use somebody to watch the dog, and then they offer to help, right? Now that's not perfect, right? It would be helpful for me to ask, and I think we notice in friendships and things like that, once we get comfortable, we will. But chances are you're not going to have somebody say to the small group, hey guys, I could really use help with buh. Would anybody bring meals over for the next couple weeks? I got a lot going on. So I think that's really important. Make it comfortable, and then also, how do we help our group pursue each other? Because it shouldn't be all up to you as leaders. And kind of go from there. Leo, comment, and then we're going to move on.
This approach, you ask open-ended questions, so you want to not pry, but you want to get to know people specifically what they need and not what you think they need.
So Leo went through a course with a few others and became a certified life coach. And so Leo's going to be doing a little work this year to coach and support some of us leaders. And we'll have a few other coaches that'll be doing that as well. Just to support, right? Just to offer and support. One of the things that you'll notice, and this just kind of a trickle down, we'll ask you to support your members, but we want to make sure you get supported in the process too. One thing Pastor Christensen does for me every other week, and actually more often than that, just makes a really clear statement like, Zach, how are you? Right? It's very open, it's very clear for me to share disappointments, struggles, but he pursues that, right? And so he does that for me. Hopefully I do that for coaches and leaders. Hopefully leaders can do that for members. Hopefully members can do that for each other, okay? So just so you're aware, as Leo shares the wise coaching knowledge, right? What do you need rather than me telling you what you need? Last two here, and then we're going to, I'll tell you what, I'm going to probably just share these two. So worship, little different language maybe here, but that we enjoy God and we express the love that we have through song, prayer, praise, etc. Right? So that's generally my worship, right? This joy, it's this enthusiasm for God, and then you just see that come out, right? It could be out of song, it could be through song, it could be through prayer, it could be through teaching, it could be through serving, it could be through something. But in some way you see this enthusiasm that's in me come out, and that's my worship, right? In Romans 12 we see, we offer our bodies as living sacrifices, and this is our spiritual form of worship. So that's worship. So we want to think a little bit about how do we worship together, because it's really nice for me to see somebody else's enthusiasm for God just spill out. It's so helpful. You're all probably aware of that. And then growth. So whether you're a new small group, an open small group, a closed small group, we're all committed to growth. And one thing that you'll notice is stagnancy can be challenging. There's something where we all feel good by helping new people connect to the gift that we have, right? In some way, I get more excited when I take some blessing that I have and I share it with other people. So whether that's adding new people to your group, whether that's helping new people find a different group where they're going to find the blessing that you have, right? How do we grow as a body of believers? I shared with you guys Dan, who came in several weeks ago at this point, and he was not necessarily, he wasn't reached out too much by his previous church when during COVID. And so he started coming to Webster. Well, Dan's going to be looking for a small group in the next, right now, and in the next 4 or 5 weeks, right? So how do we help him get connected? And that's a role for all of us. How do we help grow the people who are looking for those small groups? How do we help people enjoy the blessing that we have? Okay? Flip that page over. We're going to go quick. Ooh-wee. I don't like long meetings. So this is what we're talking about with recruitment. You just hear that 5-3 method, and what you'll see or notice, and you should be able to read most of this, is what we're going to ask you to do is think of 5 people who you think would benefit from a small group. You can reach out to them and help them connect to a small group. I'll share a little bit of how in a moment. The reason for this is we can do this big church push thing and have all these signups on Sunday mornings, but people join things through relationships. It's just how it works. I could show you'll get a few people who have the guts to just join a new small group. Not many though. We do things because we're invited to do things, not through announcements and things like that. So an invite from you, whether it's to your small group or whether it's to say, hey, look, I've loved a small group. I've found it really valuable for me. I think you should check one out. Let me put you in touch with somebody, and I'll talk to you about how to do that. And then what I'd like you to do is, those of you guys who have people in your small groups, to have them think about 3 people, right? So we're always trickling these things down, right? We're always sharing the things that we're working on with other people too. So, I'm asking you to think of 5 people, write down those names, reach out to them and say, hey, I think a small group would be good for you. And then to invite those people in your small group to also participate in this mission and vision that we have here at Webster Gardens to grow disciples of Christ who know and enjoy God, and reflect on Scripture, serve and share the gospel, okay? All have a role in that. Okay. Sometimes we try to take all the responsibility, by the way, and that just never goes well. We want to spread that around. So on Sunday mornings, we're going to have, for recruitment, we're going to have 2 kind of big pushes, or really 4, and 2 really big ones. But on the 15th and the 22nd, we're going to have tables set up for small groups, just kind of these general small group tables. Okay, and so people can come up and talk and ask about small groups. There will be a list of available small groups there. People can get signed up. They can gain some information, learn a little bit about what small groups are all about. They can sign up if they want. On August 29th and September 5th, we're going to have, out in Friendship Hall, we're going to have some kind of geographical small group tables where people can join, and this is where they can join the small groups that will be meeting in the gym, and these geographical small groups. They can sign up for that. They can meet the leaders who will be there at those tables, or they can talk to other people. And I would like for each small group that's open to have a table, not necessarily a table, but a place. We'll have multiple tables set up where you can, where people can come and meet you and talk to you as they consider joining a small group. I think this is sometimes a challenge, right? We say, hey, let's join a small group. I don't know any of you. I've never met any of you, but let me just show up on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, right? I'm not going to do that. So we want to be able to meet people beforehand. And that's where these invites come into place, right? So come on August 29th, meet some people. Come on August 22nd, go to the small group table, get a little bit more information. Come on September 5th, meet some small group leaders and members. What I would like for you to do with that, especially the 29th and the 5th, is to have you or a small group member from your group present at your small group's kind of location. And I'll give you the details as to where exactly that will be. But I would like it so that if somebody's showing up and they say, I want to join the Haviland group, and there's some spaces, they can come and meet somebody from the Haviland small group. Okay? If you're full, I'd like you to work one of those general tables, and we'll give you some lingo on that. And I've got those sign-ups here. I'm not going to give you sign-ups for the other ones, just because I just want everyone to do it. So we'll have your table location, and just assume for 20 minutes after the 8, at that point still 8:30 service and 10 o'clock service, just that you'll have somebody there for 10, 15 minutes after worship, okay? And I tell you what, I didn't write that time down, I'll give you that time, okay? Okay. Now up here, these are for the general tables, and we'll do a little, we're not going to do any training on that tonight, but these are just for the general tables. We'll have 2 different tables, East table, West table. Don't worry, it's not important, it's just for us. On August 15th, we want some people signed up for that, 3 people at each table, at each service, for a short time period after each service, okay? And what we're mainly going to talk about is helping people find a group. So we'll have a list of all the groups and all the times, and then helping people kind of understand what a group is. And the language we're going to often use is, it's going to be a place where you find friends who help you enjoy Jesus and follow Jesus. A place where you find friends that help you enjoy Jesus and follow Jesus. And that is likely going to kind of encapsulate all 6 of those key values. Okay? A couple minutes left. Let's take a look at the resource sheet real quick. Debbie, did I cover everything well enough that I needed to cover there? Thank you. So we want to have a couple things. We have those signups. We also we would like to have as many people as possible in Belong, Believe, Become, Ask Me About Small Groups t-shirts. So we'd love to do that for every member of a small group if possible. We'd like to do that for all the leaders if possible. So if you can get shirt sizes.
We just ordered 200 shirts
Thank
in a
you.
variety of sizes, and first come, first serve.
We sometimes make adjustments,
There's a lot
but
of
they don't make
2X.
them.
You need a 3X, let me know, I'll write your name on
Are
it.
those still the Belong, Believe, Become shirts like we have?
Very similar, slightly different. Different color.
Different color.
Different
Can
color.
we use our own? I mean, we've got it. In fact, it was kind of interesting, he had his on the other day when we were at.
We like, yeah.
Yeah, I would say you can use the old ones. I kind of like those little throwback things. So if you have one of those blue Ask Me About Small Groups shirts, that's fine too. Well, we just want lots of them out there, okay?
Are they already in?
Where do we get on August?
Okay, so they will probably be here on the 18th to pick up.
What color?
They're kind of like your shirt, only a little lighter.
Ahead of it. We saw him, he looks
We
good,
made
we
sure it
decided.
would
It's
look
gonna
good
be
on
black
you,
or something.
Tracy.
We just chose the color today. Just now, we
it's a
looked at
summer
you and
color.
said.
Perfect.
So August, so we can pick those up on the 18th.
I think so, the 18th.
And so either, maybe what we'll do is we'll pick them up at worship on the 22nd, and then we can wear them on the 29th and the 5th.
Yeah, they're meant to be worn on the 2 big Sundays
big
that
ones.
we have all the
Right.
tables out.
Right.
The first 2 Sundays, I don't know if they'll be
Yeah.
here or not.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that catch, Kathy. These resources, I've got a couple of blanks on them, a couple things that I'm trying to figure out. These came from ideas that you had. They came from requests that you had. They came from some lists that we've had in the past. Up at the top are a lot of video ones, all on Right Now Media. So if you don't have access to Right Now Media, talk to me real quick. We'll get you that login. Fantastic resource. You have hundreds, you have thousands of videos available. These are some of the ones that we think are pretty good. Under that, we've got some other DVD and book studies. We've got a few more than this. These are just the ones that we've had small groups really enjoy. We've got the War Room, which I know a few of your groups have done. That the World May Know. It's a Ray Vanderlaan thing. I can give you more information about that, but they go around to kind of historical places and talk about church context in those. And then we've got a few more. And then resources and books that we found helpful, just books. If you need help ordering books, let me know. Just let me know, and we can work on that. Excuse me. And then some books with discussion questions. Those are just ones that are built in that can kind of work very naturally for your group. So the previous ones are, books that you'd have to go back and say, what did you get out of this chapter? What did you enjoy? The ones with discussion questions have at the end of each section a list of questions to talk about as a small group. And then studies on books of the Bible. Some of you have used those God's Word for Today things. They're kind of workbooks that go through each book of the Bible. And there's an individual one for each book. So if you're interested in that, I'm looking into 2 others. As I was talking to Liz Pittman from CPH, that might be good resources for us. I'll share those with you if they pan out. And then the 2 other things that I have on there are apps and things that would be useful.
Can you speak for a moment about the upcoming sermon?
Prosper the City?
Yeah, that one and the studies that at least the people in the gym are going to be doing. I don't know if everybody does.
Yeah. So we have a curriculum, and at this point I'm going to send it to you. We're not going to spend too much time covering this. But we have a curriculum that's going to be focused on the 6 key values that we just talked about. We're going to kind of break those up into 2 sessions. The first one is going to be looking at the church and how we kind of act. And then the second one is going to be looking outward from the church. So as a church, how do we go forward, specifically in the small group context? So we'll talk about things like fellowship. We'll talk about things like ministry, discipleship. But we'll also talk about kind of that sending and that growth element, how do we as a small group enable and support each other to go out? And part of that's still going to be discipleship. Part of that's still going to be fellowship. But that's going to be week 1 and week 2. And I've got, I'll send those to you instead of, we won't try and cover it today. And then for the next 3 weeks, this is a kind of a 4-week study, but a 3-week thing, is Prosper the City, which I've got extra copies up over here, and I handed out to you last week, or not last week, but last time we met. And this is going to be a focus on what skills and abilities that each of the members in your group have, and then what are the kind of the opportunities for serving, and then how do we execute that, right? And it's going to be biblically focused, so it's going to start with the feeding of the 5,000. So one of the first questions that Jesus asked at the feeding of the 5,000, he says, what do we have? Just talking about asset mapping a little bit, right? What do the people in your group have? And then you start assessing the needs that are around you. What are the needs that match with what we have? So what do we have? What's the need? How can we give that? And then how do we plan that, right? So those will kind of be the 3 weeks worth of curriculum. That 4th week will encourage you to celebrate whatever you did. And we'll celebrate that in worship too. Okay, so there will be pictures involved and a lot of celebration, and that'll be a big thing. We're actually going to be doing that with 2 other churches. They'll do it a little after us, but this will be a big thing kind of all over the place. And again, we talked about this a little bit. This is your group coming up with your own specific little event. So we talked about this a little bit last time. If your group isn't like an up, moving, able to run around group, don't do like some quick, rake yards and mow lawns, right? Those aren't your assets, right? And this will come out in the curriculum itself. But you'll figure out, okay, what do we have? Maybe it's head knowledge. Maybe it's the ability to make phone calls. Maybe it's we know a lot of the Bible, whatever. And then we start thinking, how do we use that to meet a need around us, okay?
And then after that,
Oh,
at least in the gym. I want to make sure everybody
thanks.
knows at least what's going on in the gym.
Thank you. So we're going to do those things together in the gym. There's going to be 15 at least groups that meet, 16 at least groups that meet in the gym. They're going to be based on care communities. So they're going to be geographical groups. These are going to be, as you talked about recruiting, really easy groups to join. So we have somebody, let's say we have somebody in Fenton. They're going to say, I don't know what group to join. Let me join the Fenton small group. So there's going to be a small group in the table in the gym at a table, and they're going to do these studies. And so we'll get together from 9:30 to 10:20. Is that right? Yep. 9:30 to 10:20, and we'll do a little lesson, and then we'll do some kind of discussion questions that go along with that. The first 5 weeks might vary in that format, but then following that, we'll be either following sermon series or Grow Deep or possibly occasionally a 3rd curriculum. And Pastor Christensen, myself, Pastor McGinley will come into the gym, teach for 15 to 20 minutes, and then each small group will break off at their table and they'll have a discussion based on that. Does that make sense? One of my challenges, Debbie, I see you looking at me. One of my challenges is I think about this stuff all the time. So all the gaps are filled in my head, and so I try to communicate it to you. So ask questions.
Could you send out a follow-up email with all these dates? And
Yes.
who needs to be where, when?
Thank you. Yes. We'll meet tomorrow. Yes. Okay? That's good. I appreciate that. Good question. These small groups in the gym are going to be really valuable for new people. Okay? And one of the really valuable things about these, and I want you guys to work with me a little bit on this, is I think it helps us support leaders better because we're all together at a time. As you guys have needs as leaders, I should reach out to you, and I'll try to reach out to you, but there's a lot of people who I'm trying to reach out to. And so we're trying to figure out a little bit of a different format. But if there's any way that I can support you guys, let me know. We can grab coffees, lunches, we can problem solve together. If we need to do more of these so that you can brainstorm with each other, we can set those up a little bit more regularly too. Okay, but share with me what you need. Kathy?
Those of us who are already small group leaders,
Would we go to that kind of thing, or would we go to a?
Could if you wanted. You could if you wanted. What I imagine this being is a good way for small groups to start.
I see.
And that they have good support, they have good accountability, it's convenience because they're already here on a worship on a Sunday morning. I imagine a lot of these groups would do it for a year, and then they would start meeting in their house in their geographical area. They don't have to, but that's how I imagine it working.
Are you
Dan?
thinking then, like say the Fenton thing, there's gonna be somebody from Fenton who is really interested in leading a group?
Yes. Yes.
And that would be the person at that table?
Correct.
However,
a lot of small, we've made a lot of contacts, okay? Neighbors Care, small groups, made a lot of phone calls. If we have 4 people in Fenton who want to join a small group, we'll start that group without a leader in place. We'll ask for somebody to be a discussion leader, so they won't have that full responsibility of a leader to check in on the spiritual health of the people. And then we'll try to find a leader from within that group, if that makes sense.
we need a number of new leaders for that. So we're kind of just looking for people that are willing to facilitate a table.
Yeah.
So if the Lord's leading you, even though you have a small group, to just facilitate a discussion, because you guys know how to run a small group.
Right.
On Sunday morning.
Then we can take a leader from the group that joins.
Yeah, you could lead for a while, and raise up a leader at your table.
Right. Right. Which is something we always want to be thinking about in our own small groups too. Okay. 12:35. I know there's more things that we could talk about. I know I told you guys this meeting might also run long because there were a lot of things that we had to chat about. Let's pray. If there's more questions, which I'm sure they're more than welcome to be, there will be more that come up. Call me. We can email. We can get together for lunch, coffee, anything like that. I'll send out, Kathy, as you asked, those dates and some of that information, recap. That'll probably come out sometime tomorrow around 2 o'clock, okay? All right. I need to talk to Debbie about it first. So, let's pray. Let's pray. God, you call us to do exceptional things. From when your son came to right after he ascended, you've called your people to do exceptional things, not easy things. Not clean and clear things. It gets messy, it gets difficult, but you promise to be with us all the time. And so we just cling to that promise. God, at small groups, friendships, relationships, these aren't things that you can just put in a box and say, if I do this, then that'll happen. And Lord, I pray that you bless these leaders as they go forward and look to love people, and as they go forward and look to develop new disciples and create new disciples. I pray that you help them to rely on your strength and draw from you for that strength that they need. I pray that you enable me and other leaders around here to support them well with what they need, and that you allow us to draw from you and your strength, God. Just as we thought about a little bit today, we're not the ones who save people. We're not the ones who save the world. That's what you do, God. And